We now move to questions to the Minister for the Economy. If we can just take our ease momentarily whilst the Minister takes the lectern. Order members, we will commence the questions to the Minister and we'll call Saoirse Eastwood.
Please.
Concordia, ensure that we have a high-quality career system is key to connecting our people with a full range of opportunities across our economy. While the Department's Career Service works with clients of all ages and in a range of settings, it is critical that our young people in schools have timely access to high-quality professional careers advice and guidance. I recently met with the Education Minister to discuss opportunities to enhance our careers provision and increase engagement across both departments. We agreed to work collaboratively to ensure that all young people have access to the full range of career options and that they receive the best careers advice possible as they progress through school.
Eastwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank the Minister for his answer. I'm glad to hear that there has been that collaborative working, and that is something we have talked about over the last few weeks. In terms of actually moving forward, would there be an intention to agree an action plan jointly, and is there a timeline to go along with that if that's the case?
Minister.
Well, I think as we discussed together, and we discussed this on a couple of occasions, and then we brought officials together with us and met, we want to ensure that the career service, which is there, and all of the information that goes into that, is made accessible to all young people, because that's perhaps currently not the case in every set of circumstances. So in the first instance, we want to make sure that that full range of advice is available to people, because the career service itself keeps itself very much up to date with what is developing in terms of the opportunities for work and future work that might become available in the careers and the skills and the education needed to engage with those. So we needed to make sure, but we also agreed that this is the first phase of what we want to develop between both departments in ensuring that we have a seamless way of working people through the education system from primary school right up to university and beyond.
Robbie Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank the Minister for his answer to the question. We do know, sadly, over many years that children who come from a special educational needs background, or a child with a disability, children from a socially disadvantaged area will struggle to get a job in the same way as others. What conversations have been had between yourself and maybe the Education Minister to address this imbalance?
Minister.
Well, we want to ensure that that full range of advice is available to all kids, regardless of what their background is, regardless of what particular school setting they might find themselves in, that there is an opportunity for all young people coming through to get that proper professional advice as to the range of, and for their parents as well, as to the range of options available to them. And of course, the more variety of options we have, the more young people can actually access skills and training and the opportunity for employment. So this isn't confined to one particular set of students. This is for every student that's going through our system.
Cara Hunter.
The Minister for his answer so far. Minister, just on the point there of looking at the joint action plan with the Minister for Education, I recently met with a speaker for schools around the lack of standardised work experience. Is that something you've had conversations with the Education Minister on, about access to work experience and ensuring children get every opportunity possible?
Well, as I said, the meeting that I had with Minister Given was to discuss in the first instance careers advice, but we both agreed that with the two departments, because we both share responsibility for education, we need to work together very closely and seamlessly to make sure that that experience going through school is at maximum advantage for all of the young people who are going through, and that will include the area of work experience, because that's a very much part of preparing people for choosing the path that suits them best. So in the first instance, as I say, we're concentrating on careers advice and making sure that is available to all and it is delivered to all. But we have agreed that we will continue on in terms of the work and develop more areas of work as that progresses.
David Huddyford.
Mr. Speaker, question 2.
Minister.
I understand the importance of the hospitality sector for both our tourism industry and the high street economy, with approximately 57,000 jobs in the accommodation and food service sector. Addressing the challenges of rising costs cuts across several areas of government, including the Department for Communities and local councils. My department has taken steps to support businesses through the delivery of the Executive's Path to Net Zero strategy, a key objective being to ensure that all consumers have access to essential and affordable energy. The level of VAT is also a specific issue. I know that the Department of Finance has repeatedly raised with the Treasury the negative impacts on hospitality of high levels of VAT.
Mr Honeyford.
Thank you, the Minister, for the answer or for your response. Every quarter, 13% are losing money, 20% are just breaking even, and a further 20% have actually no cash reserves. You've outlined the hospitality industry is a hugely important sector and generates growth and drives our economy. Is it now time for the Minister to get together with the Department of Finance to come up with a relief package for them?
Minister.
Well, in the context of the budget that we have available to us, that's always going to be very, very challenging. But there are things that we can do. And as I say, one of the key elements of increasing cost of doing business are energy costs. And so there is, through the path to net zero, there are supports for energy and having more efficient and access to renewable energy for businesses through Invest NI. We continue to do that. The Finance Minister, I have no doubt, as I did when I was in that position, will continue to fight the fight in relation to VAT with Treasury, but I have to say they never appeared very much minded to move in these things when we did engage them, but we will continue that work. And of course, whatever measures I can take within the limited resources I have, or indeed within the limited resources in the Finance Department to support people, we will certainly do that. I have put together, I'm putting together a tourism implementation group to work on issues that will bring support to tourism and hospitality will be represented on that.
Mr McGuigan.
And just as you were finishing your response, Minister, you indicated the Tourism Partnership Board, which you recently announced your intention to set up. Can I just ask you then how you ensure the hospitality sector will be represented and be allowed to play a fruitful role within that organisation?
In that if policies and strategies are co-designed with the people who are at the working end of those and the people who are in that sector. So clearly when we're designing tourism strategy and hospitality, then we want people that are in the tourism and the hospitality sector to be engaged on that. I think that's the best outcome. As I said, in a space where we have very limited resources, we need to ensure that what we're doing with those resources is targeted in the most effective way. People who are working in the industry, working with officials, I think will give us the best possible outcome for that. And so we will ensure that people from that sector are included.
Mike Nesbitt.
Challenge to hospitality and tourism is the Electronic Travel Authority. I'd be grateful if the Minister could update the House on any negotiations he's having on that issue. And is he aware whether it is on the agenda of the British-Irish Intergovernmental Conference, which meets today?
Well, I'm not. We don't have access to the agenda for the British-Irish Intergovernmental Conference, and so I'm not sure whether that issue is on it. But I do know that if the part of that is to support the arrangements from the Good Friday Agreement, then I think they need to be ensuring that what they're doing collectively together as both governments supports the general direction that we're trying to develop in terms of growing the economy in that regard. So, as I said, the sector is very important. There has recently been a consultation out on a document that has come back in. From that, we want to set up an implementation group that will try and develop a strategy and do this at pace. This isn't just about kicking the can down the road, to try and develop a strategy which will inform what limited resources we have to be targeted in the most effective way to try and provide. And some of that is about targeting resources, but some of it is actually about clearing away barriers to tourism growth and ensuring that the agencies and the facilities that we have at our disposal are working in the most effective way.
Mark Durkin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week, the Sooty Olive restaurant in my own constituency closed its doors for the final time. And when asked what the government could have done to help, the owner said anything. The Minister has rightly pointed out the difficulty that the budget presents and how that would make it very difficult to do anything around rates. But will he accept that the rates generated by a business that has closed down are much less than a discounted rate that could be offered to hospitality businesses?
Yes, I do understand that fully, and that's an ongoing challenge. The rates that we collect fund about 10% of the executive's available resources, and that goes into health and education and all of the other priorities that people in this chamber stand up and say we need to spend more money on. So that's the balance between trying to raise money that we have, but also to do it in a way which tries to ensure that businesses stay open, because clearly if the consequence of rates being collected puts businesses out, then that there is no rate collected. But there are other challenges there in relation to energy costs and other matters that are equally providing significant challenge to businesses, and we have to try and find ways to support people across a range of matters so that the issue of rates doesn't become the key factor in terms of their survival as a business or not.
Call Doug Beattie.
The responsibility for establishing Intertrade UK sits with the Department of Levelling Up and Communities, who are in the planning stage. As part of my plans to grow the economy, we will be engaging with all relevant partners and bodies to ensure trade moves smoothly and businesses are kept informed of new trading arrangements. We look forward to working with all stakeholders, including Intertrade UK, and I had initial discussions at the East West Council meeting recently on what positive steps can be taken to grow trade across these islands. The importance of smooth trade across the islands and further afield is critical to successful business export growth.
Mr. Beattie.
For your answer, and I get we're still in the really early stages of Intertrade UK, so it's good that your engagement, and thank you for that. But can I ask you, looking forward, you clearly put in a budget bid for Intertrade Ireland. Have you done the same for Intertrade UK, working on a principle that's roughly the same type of budget?
Well, as I say, the Intertrade UK is actually a creation of Whitehall, and its ownership stays in Whitehall with the Department of Levelling Up and Communities, so we don't have any funding input to it. The Intertrade Ireland, as you know, is a creation of the Good Friday Agreement and the North-South bodies that flowed from that, and the arrangements for funding were established at that time 25 years ago in terms of our contribution and Dublin's contribution to that. So Intertrade UK is a different animal, if you like. It won't have the same functions as Intertrade Ireland. It is about making sure that there is information shared and promotion of trade east to west and west to east, and ensuring that people are aware and where problems may arise, that people are informed about solutions to them. So we don't have a direct funding input, and as he has acknowledged, it is at its early stages in terms of its development, but we will obviously keep an eye to that, and anything which can enhance our trade across the islands is something that we will engage with.
Dennis.
Since taking office, the Minister has set out a clear and positive strategy in terms of how to develop our economy. Will the Minister ensure that his department's budget aligns to that economic strategy?
Minister.
Well, as we've been saying in response to previous questions, there's a real challenge for all departments in terms of the budget available to us. There's an acknowledgement by the government prior to the executive coming back that we have been underfunded. We continue to suffer from the legacy of that underfunding, and it hasn't been properly addressed by the Treasury as yet. And the fiscal framework that we need to be in is that those discussions have begun and are ongoing between the Department of Finance, and I know the First and Deputy First Minister will become involved in that as well. So we all face the challenge of very restricted budgets. What I have done is provide strategic focus to the department across 4 areas. So what we will ensure is that whatever limited resources we have are being used with an eye to that strategic focus, and that way try to achieve good outcomes for regional balance, for good jobs, for productivity, and for our challenges in meeting net zero.
Mr.
Speaker, Minister, the question referenced the 10x economy strategy. So far as I could ascertain, 10x is a slogan coined by a US self-help expert, which had no real meaningful target in relation to the Northern Ireland economy. Can I ask, are there going to be specific targets around growing the all-Ireland economy? Will they be in the programme for government, and will they be aligned to a multi-year budget? And what will those targets be?
Well, I mean, he has made his own commentary in relation to 10x, but rather than get back to starting these, because we have a 3-year mandate, rather than get back to starting all of these strategies from scratch and going out and consulting on them, the mandate would be over by the time that would be complete. We decided, with the agreement of the department and with the agreement of Invest NI, to put a strategic focus. That was one of the criticisms, by the way, in terms of the report into Invest NI, that there wasn't sufficient strategic focus. The All-Ireland economy, we have, as he will know, we have at the meeting on Friday, the North-South sectoral meeting, we have agreed the increased headcount for Intertrade Ireland to do more work in the area of North-South collaboration, growing of clusters, exports, and developing the north-south economy. The economy itself, north to south, has grown since 2015, I think from just over 2 billion to by 2022 just over 10 billion. So clearly, organically, it has been growing even through the debates and all of the uncertainty around Brexit. We now have an opportunity to put a step change into that. So as yet we have not set any specific target for that, but I certainly will be developing those discussions now that we have put Intertrade Ireland on the footing that I think will allow it to do much more work in this area. We will examine what can be done, and we have already had very fruitful and useful discussions with all of the departments in Dublin that we were dealing with in terms of growing the economy.
Jim Allister.
It seems to me the Minister doesn't exude much interest or enthusiasm for Intertrade UK. But if he ever gets round to discussing it with the Levelling Up Secretary, would he at least advocate that it be headquartered in Northern Ireland, in a progressive commercial town like Ballymena?
Minister.
Did you say progressive at the start of that? Right. Okay. Anyway, I mean, as I said in answer to Mr. Beattie, it's an idea which was developed as a consequence of that command paper. It's not fully developed. In that paper, it was agreed that by the British government that it would be housed in Whitehall and it would be responsibility of the Department of Levelling Up and Communities. So we don't have a function in terms of its actual operation. It's to provide a service. And I have had discussions with the Secretary of State for Levelling Up, Michael Gove, at the meeting that we did with the East West Council in relation to it. It's to have a service which is to inform businesses who wish to do business over here as to how they can go about doing that, and that's its function. And so anything which improves trade east or west or north or south, I'd be very happy to engage with, even for Ballymena.
Question for Cahir, question number 4, please.
Minister.
Community wealth building is an important piece to the delivery of my overall economic strategy, and one that I am committed to strengthening. Community wealth building cuts across several areas of government, and in particular connects with the work of the Department of Communities, and I intend to work closely with the AFC to address agreed recommendations outlined in their recent report by an independent Ministers' advisory panel. The first recommendation of the report is to adopt, deliver and resource a social economy strategy. In response, I have initiated the development of a comprehensive 3-year social enterprise action plan. I will be working closely with the sector representatives to ensure the action plan is co-designed and aligns with my economic strategy.
President Killian.
Minister, can you outline, given the focus that you've rightly put on in terms of regional balance, can you ensure the focus on social economy, community wealth building, is placed in areas of deprivation like the North West and like areas in Belfast, please?
Minister.
There is a pilot scheme already up and running in relation to community wealth building between Larne and Derry, North West generally, but specifically focused in Derry. And we also recognise that when we talk about regional balance and about addressing inequality, that doesn't just exist outside of Belfast, that there are areas within Belfast that suffer from inequalities that need to be addressed. So, of course, when we talk about issues like community wealth building, social enterprise and the contribution they could make at grassroots levels, that's not a replacement for economic activity in those areas through the conventional means, but we want to support that, and there are some very good projects being developed. There are some very good action plans from the social economy side to try and make sure that they provide support for people who wish to enter into the workplaces and for projects that would not just bring about economic benefit but bring about social benefit for communities that need it the most.
Salman Hall.
Thank you, Minister, for your comments so far. Just really following on from the question from Carol, is what would your assessment be of how community wealth building can be utilised in rural areas, in specifically in my own, in North Antrim, in terms of building that economic resilience outside of those more urban hubs?
Minister.
I think there are many very good social economy projects in rural areas, and as I said, we have resourced a 3-year strategy for social economy, which I expect will not just be confined to urban areas. The project that I referred to, the pilot project, which I think in terms of community wealth building will bring us very much good information about how that can be done, is at the moment the one is the linkage between Larne and Derry, which I think is a very good project with people very knowledgeable in that area involved in it, and also involved in the the name of the organisation escapes me, the Community Development Trust as well. So I do think these schemes are not just this pilot happens to involve urban areas, but what we do want to see is the opportunities for social enterprise right across the rural areas as well. We understand clearly that rural areas suffer from a lack of access to services and in many ways sometimes hidden deprivation that isn't readily identified. So the reach of these projects into those areas and working with communities is very, very important, and we will encourage that through that strategy.
Lisa McHugh.
Following a historic and successful joint bid, the 5 football associations across these islands are set to host the UEFA European Championships in 2028. In February, officials from my own department and the Department for Communities, alongside the Irish FA and the GAA, met with the UEFA delegation here in Belfast. Since then, there has been further engagement and significant progress has been made, including detailed plans that demonstrate how a redeveloped Casement Park can host games during Euro 2028. We now await a final report from UEFA expected by early June in response to these proposals. This tournament is estimated to generate $2.6 billion in benefits across these islands. With games due to be hosted in Belfast and Dublin, it creates a fantastic opportunity to promote the island of Ireland to a worldwide audience of over 6 billion people.
Mr. McKay.
Thank you, Minister, for your answers up to this point. And you know too that just not only as an executive flagship project, but how central Casement Park is to meet the needs of the Gaels of Antrim and the wider Ulster Gaelic community as well. So can you give us an update, in fact, of where we're at in terms of the redevelopment of Casement Park?
Minister.
Well, I acknowledge what he says. Casement Park in itself was a project, obviously, in its initiation to provide for Gaelic games in Ulster and further afield, also to provide economic regeneration in that part of West Belfast, and I have no doubt for the whole of Belfast, and providing a fantastic venue. But in terms of an update, the work is progressing well. The Ulster Council of the GAA has commenced site clearance work, and this is a very welcome and proactive move on their behalf. They have committed £4 million of their own money to keep this project alive, and it's a clear demonstration of their commitment to being a positive and active contributor in bringing the Euro 2028 International Soccer Tournament to Belfast.
Paul Just McDulty.
Mr. First Answer so far. Does the Minister agree that, or what communications has he had with his colleagues in the Executive Office whereby delays to potential tendering are hiking costs and potentially scuppering the possibility of the Euros being hosted in West Belfast in 2028?
Well, the matter doesn't rest with the Executive Office. It rests with the Department of Communities. I would like to see the tendering documents released. I think that will actually give us more certainty in terms of what the actual cost of the project will be. I met recently with both the IFA and the GAA myself, and there is a concern that any delays in relation to this will potentially dent confidence from UEFA, for whose decision it will be whether to host the games here or not. So I'd like to see that moving at pace and moving as soon as it can possibly happen. I understand the Communities Minister is engaged with the British Government in terms of their contribution, but I don't think that should necessarily delay the release of tender documents. I think that the sooner they're released, the work, as I say, I think GAA's own risk has already begun on site in their contribution, and I think if those documents were released, then we would get a clearer sense of what the actual cost might be.
Owen Tennyson. Minister.
I do plan to introduce socialisation of grid connection charges. Socialisation of connection charges is an important step in removing the current high cost barrier to the mass adoption of heat pumps and electric vehicles. It will create opportunities for business to decarbonise and is a key enabler in meeting our net zero targets. However, precise details of how this will work will need to be worked through. My department conducted a joint call for evidence on Northern Ireland's connection charging policy with the utility regulator late last year. A paper summarising the responses to this joint call for evidence will be published shortly. Officials from my department, along with the utility regulator, are assessing the evidence with a view to publishing an options paper for consultation in June.
Mr. Tennyson.
to thank the Minister. That is positive news. The Minister will be aware that the cost of connection alongside lack of market support and planning timelines are the three big barriers that are always cited by the renewable sector. Can I ask the Minister further to his announcement on connection charge and what engagement he's had with his colleague in the Department of Infrastructure around planning improvement programmes?
Well, the executive parties, actually, when we met the parties who were going to make up the executive last summer, we talked about planning reform, not in the sense of planning policy, but improvement in the planning systems and the ability to get decisions taken quickly. So there was a broad agreement across all the parties. I haven't had the opportunity for direct engagement in relation to this, but I have no doubt that when we produce this paper, it will take me into a conversation, because I think he's correct in saying that a number of factors are cited in terms of moving us further down that kind of renewable energy path, which we need to, according to the targets that are set for us by 2030 and 2050. We need to move quickly into that area. And so I think anything which provides a barrier to that needs to be addressed, certainly in terms of the systems of government.
Murphy.
Minister, given that grid connection tends to be a lot more difficult in rural areas, would you agree that socialisation of cost will promote regional imbalance?
Yes, I think it will. She will know, as I do, representing rural areas, that connection charges can be quite prohibitive because just of the isolation of the topography of places and getting that. So I do think the opportunity to socialise those charges will assist people in either building their own homes or establishing small businesses or businesses in rural areas and getting that support for it. So it is an important factor in ensuring that we do have more regional balance, but it's also an important factor in making sure that we move towards meeting our net zero targets as well.
Declan McAleer.
Councillor Bershaft, question 7, please.
Minister.
I recognise the importance of the agri-food processing sector to our economy and the contribution it will make to delivering my economic strategy. My department, through Invest NI, provides a wide range of support to the sector in areas including innovation, skills, sustainability and export development. However, the sector faces challenges including a gap in productivity compared to firms in the South and in Britain. I am supportive of activities which will help address this challenge and will consider any proposals which are presented to me in relation to support for the agri-food and drink processing sector.
Mr. McAleer.
I thank the Minister for his commitment. Minister, in terms of formulating any particular scheme to support the agri-food sector, what would be a potential timeline for that to be launched?
Well, there is currently a project in relation to that under discussion. It has been through various processes, including my department and now business case for the Department of Finance. So I would expect, certainly within this year, that we're in a position to be announcing something in terms of support for the sector.
Mr. Midlone.
Minister, can you advise just in regard to the agri-food sector and indeed the wider farming produce, will your department be in a position to contribute in any way to the obligations of the just transition?
Minister.
Well, it will primarily lie in the areas, I'm sure you would understand, of the Department of Agriculture and Environment to assist people in terms of getting land and farms into that area. I think perhaps even through some of the previous questions we've been having in terms of connectivity, in terms of the grid connections and making that more accessible for people, we will be able to contribute in that regard. So I think the move towards just transition and the move towards the targets that we've set ourselves isn't for a single department. We all have a responsibility. We have a legal obligation, but we also have a moral obligation. And certainly, given the type of rural society we live in, there are opportunities for farmers and for landowners to become involved in that work. And so anything I think which we can do across all of the departments, including my own department, to support that, we'll be happy to do.
Harry Harvey.
Mr. Speaker, I'll be question 8,
Minister.
The aerospace sector has over 100 companies that employ 8,000 workers and contributes to an estimated $1.9 billion to the local economy. Invest NI, supported by the department, engaged with the MOD across several forums. In 2022-23, MOD spend per head was £100 here, compared to £380 in Scotland and in England, and £250 in Wales. Invest NI works closely with the ADS Trade Association to lobby for additional spend here.
Mr. Harvey.
and I thank the Minister for his answers thus far. Minister, be aware there is a huge potential to maximise Ministry of Defence spend in Northern Ireland, and my figure is slightly different than yours, currently set at a meagre £60 per head of population compared to £340 for the rest of the UK. Just wondering, Minister, what support can your department give businesses seeking to tender for Ministry of Defence contracts moving forward?
Minister.
Well, as I said, InvestNI is already working in that space with both the MOD and with ADS Trade Association to lobby for additional spend, and obviously to facilitate companies who want to get into that area of work, and that will continue in the time ahead.
We now move to topical questions. I call Sinead McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Minister, in order to reach the renewable targets by 2030, we have heard from the sector experts that significant acceleration of pace is needed. What would you say to those that say that you're not aiming high enough and that you're not ambitious enough?
Well, I didn't set the targets, so it's not anything to do with my ambition in these regards. The Executive in the last mandate agreed to targets that were to be met, and we all have to bend our will to try and ensure and achieve that. As I say, it's not just now a legal obligation, it's a moral obligation as well to meet those targets. So wherever we are finding, and I understand in other jurisdictions they are struggling, and I've no doubt that these targets are incredibly challenged, and I've also no doubt there needs to be a significant acceleration in terms of what's happening in that space. But I also think it presents us with significant opportunities in terms of renewables because of the nature of the country that we live in, and also the expertise in our manufacturing sector to be able to get us into that space. So I do think these aren't my targets, these are agreed targets across all the Executive, supported by the Assembly, and I think we should all be doing our very best to make sure they're met.
Ms. McLaughlin.
Minister, even if we invest in the right places, fundamental changes actually have to take place, particularly around our planning regulation and our grid capacity. And honestly, there is no sense of urgency around all of this. So what guarantees can you give to us that you will lead an all-systems approach?
Minister. As I say, this is a matter for the Executive as a whole. We have a responsibility in it, we have a responsibility to work with others in it, and we certainly will not slack. That's why I made net zero one of the 4 priorities for the department. Identified that when we were providing a strategic focus to the department, that net zero approach was one of the 4 of those targets. So certainly we'll do everything in our regard, and we recognise that this has to move at pace, that this has to accelerate if targets are to be met. And as I say, it is a matter for right across the Executive. It's a matter for collaboration between all of the departments, and I would hope when it comes to that, there will be a matter for support for this House as well.
Mr.
Speaker, Minister, I recently had the opportunity to hear from NICFA and other community and voluntary sector representatives who are doing important work in terms of skills and employment. They highlighted to us, obviously, the concerns around the end of the current funding round of the Shared Prosperity Fund. Minister, what are you doing to support them as they obviously go through this anxious time?
Minister. Well, the issue is that a lot of the funding which we provided to that sector came directly from European funding. That European funding was lost. We managed over COVID to kind of plug that gap for a bit, but that came to an end in the last round, and that wasn't replaced despite the promises of the government. So now we've moved from a process where the Executive had funding which could be used through the Department of Economy, who knew the groups that were in the areas doing this work, to provide support to them, that they're in a competition-based approach directly to Whitehall. And that has been a very haphazard outcome to that, and it now, while I very much welcome the groups that got funding to continue the work, they are now coming to a cliff edge and no degree of certainty as to where that's going to. So of course we will try to work with them. We will continue to engage with the department in London. At the East-West Council that I referred to earlier, I raised the issues with the Minister Michael Gove in relation to that. They appear to be moving more to the line that the Executive can have some input into that, which I hope is the case, because we know the groups, we know the work they're doing, we know the necessity of it, and we will give them whatever support we can. But it will be a matter of trying to see what we have in our limited resources, but trying to encourage that continued funding from Whitehall to be directed right into the areas where it's needed most.
Mr. Riddle.
I thank the Minister for that response and welcome that work that's ongoing. Will the Minister give a commitment then to obviously continue to meet with the sector, but also to meet with the Minister for Communities to ensure that there's a joined-up approach right across the community and voluntary sector, providing some reassurance that their local representatives are fighting for them?
Yes, I'm more than happy to meet with a Minister for Communities in relation to it. We have a shared interest in this. The big factor that we have, I suppose, is that when we're talking to people abroad, when we're talking to people here, the big attraction for people to come here and invest is the people and skills. That's the number one attraction that people will refer you to. And our biggest challenge is actually getting more people and more skills because of the way that support has been removed from, as I say, the European funding into direct Whitehall funding on a competition basis. So, of course, we want to fix that, and I'm very happy to work with the Department of Communities. I know the interest they have in this regard. And if jointly we can put pressure on Whitehall to deliver the goods in that area, we will do that, I'm sure, and we'll also see what we can do ourselves to try and support those groups who are providing that very vital service.
Diane Forsyth.
Mr Speaker, Minister, the tourist industry in Northern Ireland has huge untapped potential for our Northern Ireland economy. Could the Minister please outline what steps he plans to take to promote tourism in Northern Ireland and highlighting its top attractions like the Mourne Mountains?
Minister.
Well, a number of, I agree with you. I think we could do much more. Tourism industry, 70% of people employed are outside of Belfast, so it certainly adds to regional balance in terms of support for it. There was a consultation document out. There's been a lot of feedback in relation to that. What we're now setting up is a tourism implementation group, which, as I said, will involve people from the sector, from hospitality and other sectors, to make sure that whatever limited resources we have, we will target those in the most effective way. I've also been in discussion with the various tourism agencies and with the Minister, Catherine Martin, in the South in relation to the tourism brands that have been very successful. So there is a piece of work that's been paid for out of the Shared Island Fund in relation to the Wild Atlantic Way and the Causeway Coast. We have discussions in relation to the Hidden Heartlands brand, which could come up into Fermanagh, Omagh. I know they're very keen in that area in relation to it. And of course, in the area that she and I both represent, Ireland's Ancient East, doesn't stop at Carlingford Lough. I mean, the attraction of that and I suppose the central theme of that extends very much into the counties Armagh, Down and perhaps beyond up into Antrim. So I think there's a lot of work that we can do there. I did have engagement, as I say, also with tour operators when I was in the United States to encourage them to come here and to know more about the place and to make sure that Tourism Ireland works for them. I've been to many events since I came into office to offer support to the tourism sector, and we continue to do that because there is, I think, as she said, so much untapped as yet that we can get into.
Ms. Forsyth.
And as the Minister will be aware, locally, Newrymourne and Down District Council are moving towards a rebrand of their tourism strategy, and they're removing the names of local area attractions. They're removing Mourne Mountains, Slave Gully and Strangford Lough in favour of a broad term, Ireland's true nature. Would the Minister agree with me that there's a responsibility on local councils to focus on their local area and local attractions in promoting their tourism strategy to maximise the local potential?
I think it's the way branding has been done is you have a large brand which attracts people, and then when they become an interest in terms of the overall, should it be the Wild Atlantic Way? I mean, that's the full length of the coastline on the West Coast. Then when people are interested in going there because of the large type of brand, then you get into that local sector offer what's available. That's what attracts any of us that are planning a holiday. You look at an area that you might want to go, and then you look at specific things. So I think it's a mixture of both. It's a mixture of big brands which have significant attraction, which can be promoted internationally and get international visitors here, but also ensuring that at a local level that we're promoting all of the various attractions that we have. And the council area that we both live in has no shortage of attractions for people to come and see, either on the island of Ireland, locally, or internationally as well. So we need to make sure and promote both.
Deirdre Hargey.
Building on the previous question, what plans are in place, or do you have to extend Fulch's tourism brands here in the north, taking advantage of those global impacts?
We have had conversations already with officials. There has been a piece of work already agreed and funded by the Shared Island Fund in relation to the Wild Atlantic Way and the Causeway Coast to consider linkages there. I think there is scope for looking at the other major brands in terms of Ireland Ancients East and the Hidden Heartlands, and we're in conversation in relation to those. I hope to see some movement there. Of course, we also want to make sure that we talk to people on the ground to see, because I know there has been a clamour for some of these larger brands to be available. And in that then, I think we not only lift the level of offering, but we also lift the understanding of the attraction, both at a national level and an international level.
Ms. Hargett.
Just as you know, in terms of tourists and how they're moving now, they're more inquisitive in terms of local places, local histories, and the impacts of those. So just what plans or engagement do you have, in particularly around political tourism, local social tourism, and to engage those key sectors, but importantly also the communities in feeding into those bigger strategies?
Well, I think those kind of local political tours, the cultural tours, they actually have the opportunity to bring tourism benefits and the benefits of tourism spend into areas which not necessarily have had that, haven't had the kind of peace dividend. And, you know, without probably a huge amount of promotion, things like the black taxi tours on the Falls and the Shankles are, I think, the second biggest attraction in Belfast, without being really seriously promoted. So I don't doubt, and sure in Derry as well, that experience of the Walls, but also the Free Derry Museum, can be better promoted as well. And as I say, they have the benefit of bringing jobs and income into areas which haven't benefited from in the past. So yes, absolutely, as part of the strategy going forward, we will look at the issue. I get all the sensitivities around political tours and cultural tours, but they are an area of interest for people coming here. And they're managed well in other parts of the world. They're managed well in the south, where I'm sure you're familiar with a lot of the tours in Dublin around sites that were in conflict there. So I think these are important. They're attractions. There is a greater curiosity among international visitors about the history and the culture of places, as well as the sense of place. And I think we need to do all we can to promote them.
Robert Clark.
Mr. Speaker, can I ask the Minister if there was any plans specifically to introduce any additional apprenticeship schemes?
Minister. Well, there are a range of programmes which deal with apprenticeships, and they are critically important because, as I was saying in response to one of your colleagues, particularly when you go internationally, what people talk about is the attraction here are the people and the skills. So we need to ensure that we have sufficient skills. The funding that will be used for programmes for bringing people into the workforce and back in towards that was European funding, and it hasn't been fully replaced by Whitehall. But we need to try and do more in that area. We also need to ensure, I think it was in response to one of the earlier questions, that the job of work that myself and the Education Minister have agreed to do together is to ensure that young people understand the range of options available to them. We're not convinced that in all schools that young people are told about the possibility of apprenticeships, about the possibility of getting qualifications which are equivalent degrees, but earning while you're learning as well, which are great options for young people. So where we can get the additional resources to provide additional courses, and there are already quite a few, we will do that. But certainly we want to make sure that people are aware, fully aware from a young age, and their parents, of what range of options are available to them. And that's the piece of work that myself and the Education Minister have agreed to undertake together. Mr. Clark.
Except maybe sometimes there's criticisms of apprentices seen as cheap labour, but particularly those with electrical, plumbing, bricklayers and so on, where there's a shortage now and in terms of the cost. Has he any plans specifically to actually make it more attractive for them, to make them feel more valued, as opposed to just seen as cheap labour?
Minister.
Well, I think, he correctly identifies that not only are these good jobs, good skills to have, they're transferable wherever you go, but also we're now in a situation where people can't get apprentices, they can't get skilled workers, they can't get people in construction skills and a whole range of other skills. So I think there's a greater sense from employers, and we need to keep encouraging this, to value young people that they're bringing in. And anybody that we speak to are very keen to get young people into their workplace across all ranges of business, and to give them the skills that they need to work in their business. So I think that there needs to be an understanding, if there's not in certain industries or in certain sectors of industries that they think it's just a source of cheap employment, it's going to be vital at a time when we don't have sufficient people in the workforce. It's going to be vital that you get young people in, give them the skills, and give them sufficient support in order to make them want to stay and continue to work in your business.
Steve Egan.
Indeed. Minister, could you outline your proposals to replace the non-domestic renewable heating initiative scheme, please?
Yes, I mean, the member will be aware that a previous executive committed. It was part of the agreement to close the RHI scheme. I have put forward proposals to the executive to do just that. I think that and I hope that the executive will deal with that in the not too distant future. We have a situation where the scheme is not delivering what its intended outcomes were in terms of carbon reduction. We've also a system where as I say, there was a previous agreement among the parties to get the scheme closed. So I would have thought, and I would have hoped that that would have been done in a previous mandate, but it has now landed with me to clear up this particular mess. And so my intention, as I've already brought this matter to the Executive's attention, is to close the scheme, to consult on the best way forward to do that, and to try and get access to the funding that we are missing out on over the years to get better schemes in place.
Mr. Aiken.
Thank you very much indeed for the Minister. Minister, have you done any costings on what the cost of the closure would be?
There have been costings done, but they obviously need to be bottomed out, and that's part of what the paper that we brought to the Executive will do. I think we need to get the Executive agreed and agreeable to bring in a closure to this scheme, and then we will put forward that. And we have no doubt that will be a matter of some debate and discussion. But we have a sense of what the cost of that will be. We've also a sense of the money. But bear in mind, this was funded through AMI, so it wasn't funded through our block grant. So not only have we a sense of what it will cost to close down over a number of years to close the scheme down, and to ensure that those who are genuine in the scheme are fairly treated in that closure, but we also a sense of what we're actually missing out in terms of what we could be spending on schemes which do contribute to net zero.
Owen Tennyson, I've given notice of an urgent oral question to the Minister of Finance. I remind members that if they wish to ask a supplementary question, they should rise continually in their place.